The Threads of Ruin. Volume 2, The Second Weaver. Part 4, The Fractured Grey. Chapter 1, 30 Days of Silence. The first thing one noticed after the divergence was the silence inside his own head. For 3 days, 72 hours of cascading through time, creating clones, fighting a Tier 5, and operating as a 55-node distributed intelligence, he had existed in a state of continuous, overlapping awareness. 55 perspectives flowing into a single pool of consciousness. 55 sets of eyes seeing different angles of the same problem. 55 minds calculating in parallel, each one a processor in a biological supercomputer. Now there was one set of eyes, one stream of thought, one mind rattling around in a skull that felt cavernously empty after the density of the network. He sat on a rock outside the cave and tried to eat a gray tuber. His hands were shaking, not from fear, not from exhaustion, but from a sensation he had no framework to describe. It was like being deaf after a lifetime of hearing, like being blind after a lifetime of sight. The absence of the network wasn't a loss of information, it was a loss of dimension. He had been three-dimensional in the network. Now he was flat. "You're staring at that tuber like it personally wronged you," Myra said, sitting down beside him. "I'm calculating the optimal way to partition it for caloric distribution. You're holding it in one hand and haven't taken a bite in 4 minutes. The calculation is more complex than it appears." Myra took the tuber from his hand, broke it in half, and handed one piece back. "Eat." He ate. It tasted like wet cardboard and regret, the universal flavor of the gray. But his body needed the calories, and his body, unlike his mind, was not given to existential crises. It had been 30 days since the divergence. 30 days since 55 Wrens had walked away from the canyon in 54 different directions. 30 days since the sky had cracked and healed and cracked again, each fracture smaller than the last, but none of them quite disappearing. The gray was different now. Everyone could feel it, even the people without abilities, the ones who had survived on luck and stubbornness alone. The air was heavier. The light was dimmer. The gray sky, which had always been featureless and oppressive, now had a texture to it, a faint, shifting pattern that was visible if you looked at it sideways, like a hologram hidden in static. And the creatures were changing. In the first week after the warden's death, the stalker population on the Gray Plain had tripled. New specimens emerged from the deep, not just stalkers, but things that didn't match any classification in Wren's taxonomy. Creatures with the armored bulk of renders but the speed of stalkers. Creatures with the geometric precision of the Tier 5's body but scaled down to human size. Creatures that moved through the mist like shadows and left holes in the ground where they walked, as if their mere presence was eroding the fabric of the world. The system was compensating. The warden was gone, so the system was increasing the difficulty of the test, throwing more enemies, harder enemies, stranger enemies at the surviving humans to maintain the pressure that the warden had previously calibrated. Or a darker part of one's mind suggested the system is panicking. The warden was supposed to maintain control. Without it, the system is throwing everything it has at the problem, us, hopping something sticks. 3 new stalker variants spotted in the eastern sector, Lena reported, dropping from a shadow near the cave entrance. She was breathing hard, shadow stepping took energy, and the increasing density of the Gray's atmosphere was making it harder. 2 are like the standard model but faster, maybe 15 meters per second sprint speed. The third one is different. It has the same body plan, but its skin is translucent. You can see the organs working inside it. "Translucent," Wren 1 said. "That suggests a lack of pigmentation, which in turn suggests it spends most of its time underground or in darkness. The translucency might be a side effect of environmental adaptation, or it might be intentional, a form of camouflage in low-light conditions. Or it's a completely new species and we're wrong about everything," Lena said. "That's also possible," Your optimism is inspiring. It's not optimism, it's probability assessment. Myra stood up. I want to see the translucent one. Absolutely not. I can observe from a safe distance. My ability works at range. I don't need to be close. Your ability works at 300 meters maximum. That's not a safe distance from a creature that can sprint at 15 meters per second. Then I'll observe from 400 meters. At 400 meters, your ability's resolution drops too. Ren, Myra's voice was quiet but firm. Something is wrong with this world and I can't figure out what it is if I don't look at the new creatures. My ability evolved to understand design. These new things are being designed in real time, right in front of us. I need to see the process. Ren 1 looked at her. She was 13 now, or whatever passed for 13 in the gray, where time was measured in cycles of gray light rather than days. She was taller than she had been a month ago, stronger. Her head was no longer shaved. The hair had grown back in a dark fuzz that made her look younger, more vulnerable, which was deceptive because her ability had evolved to the point where she could dismantle a stalker's attack pattern with a single sentence. He calculated the risk. The probability of Myra being detected at 400 meters by a creature that hunted by vibration and thermal sensing, approximately 12%. The probability of her being caught if detected, approximately 65%. The probability of the team rescuing her if she was caught, approximately 40%. Unacceptable. But the probability of understanding the system's design changes without direct observation, approximately 5%. Also unacceptable. There are conditions, he said. Name them. Lena shadow steps you to the observation point and stays with you. If the creature moves toward you, you leave immediately. No arguments, no, just one more second. You wear the thermal dampening cloak that Atom made, and you maintain a running commentary on what your ability is telling you, so that even if something goes wrong, the information isn't lost. Myra nodded, agreed. If you die, I will be very annoyed. That's the most emotional thing you've ever said to me. I'm working on it. Chapter 2, The Translucent Stalker. They found it in a shallow ravine 3 kilometers east of the base, picking over the remains of a creature that might have been a rendered juvenile. It was alone, a significant deviation from standard stalker behavior, which was strictly solitary. Lena shadow-stepped Myra and herself to a position on a rocky outcropping 400 meters from the ravine. The thermal dampening cloak, a crude garment made from stalker chitin and render hide, lined with a gray moss paste that Atom had discovered had mild heat-absorbing properties, covered Myra from head to toe. She looked like a small, gray, vaguely human-shaped lump. Talk, Ren 1 said through the communication channel. Saya had developed the channel over the past month, a technique using modified stalker vocal cords as resonators, allowing short-range communication between team members. It was crude, prone to static, and had a range of about 500 meters, but it worked. Myra's voice came through quiet and focused. The design is wrong. Define wrong. Stalkers were designed with a specific philosophy: minimal structure, maximum efficiency. No redundant organs, no wasted material, every part optimized for hunting. This thing has redundancies: 2 hearts, 4 lungs, dual neural columns. It's like someone took the stalker blueprint and said, what if it couldn't die? Regeneration. Not quite, it's more like fault tolerance. If one system fails, another takes over. You could destroy its heart and the second heart would keep it alive. You could sever its spinal cord and the secondary neural column would maintain motor function. It's not unkillable, but you'd have to destroy every redundant system simultaneously. Ren 1 felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. Simultaneous destruction of multiple systems. That's exactly what the Tier 5 required. That's exactly the strategy we developed for the Warden. The system isn't just making harder creatures, it's making creatures that require the same tactics we used to kill the warden. It's training us or testing us or adapting to us. The translucency, Myra continued. It's not camouflage, it's structural. The chitin is thinner, almost crystalline. It's trading defense for something else. What? Myra was quiet for 10 seconds. When she spoke again, her voice had changed, flatter, more analytical, as if her ability was speaking through her. The chitin is a conductor. It conducts. Not heat, not electricity, something else. Something that feels like the thread. Ren One's hand went to his chest. The thread pulsed in response, not with its usual warm resonance but with a discordant vibration, like a guitar string plucked out of tune. It's conducting temporal energy, Myra said. The creature can sense the thread, not just the physical presence of someone using it, the energy of the thread itself. It's a countermeasure. The system built a creature specifically designed to detect temporal manipulation. Of course it did, Ren One thought. I broke the rules. The system noticed. Now it's building antibodies. Ren, Lena's voice came through the channel, tight with urgency. It's moving. Direction. Toward us slowly, not hunting, patrolling, but it's coming. Pull out now. Lena shadow-stepped. Myra felt the familiar displacement of shadow travel, the brief, sickening sensation of being squeezed through a pipe of darkness. And then they were on a hilltop 2 kilometers away, the creature nothing but a translucent shape in the distant ravine. But Myra's ability was still active, still connected to the creature. And as it moved through the ravine, she saw something that made her blood freeze. It's not patrolling, she whispered. It's tracing. It's following the residual thread energy that Ren left behind during the cascade. The energy soaked into the terrain, and it's tracking the path of the clones. Ren One said nothing for a long time. How far can it trace? He asked. I don't know, but if the thread energy persists in the environment the way physical evidence does, it could trace the path all the way back to the canyon, back to the base. From the canyon, it could trace the paths of the 54 clones who diverged. Yes, it could find every single one of them. Oh yes. Ren One closed his eyes. The thread in his chest pulsed with that wrong, discordant vibration, and for the first time since arriving in the gray, he felt something he had never felt before. Not fear, not despair. Guilt. Because he had created 54 clones, and he had sent them into the world, and he had not considered, had not calculated, that his power might leave a trail that could be followed. 54 Wrens, 54 trails, 54 targets for a creature designed specifically to hunt temporal manipulators. What have I done? Chapter 3, The Deaths Begin. The first report came in on day 33. A runner, one of the messenger corps that had developed between survivor settlements, arrived at the base with a story that made Ren One's blood run cold. North Sector, the runner panted, collapsed on the cave floor while Saya checked his vitals. Warlord Kaelin's territory. A creature showed up 3 days ago, translucent like glass, started hunting specific people. Which people? Ren One asked, though he already knew. Boys, young men, all of them looked exactly the same. Dark hair, thin build, scar on the left eyebrow. Ren One felt the thread shudder in his chest. How many? 5 dead that I know of. Kaelin's people found the bodies. All of them had their chests opened. Something was taken from inside. Not the heart, not any organ I could identify, just gone. The same harvesting behavior as the stalkers on the first day. But instead of harvesting from random humans, these creatures are harvesting from clones. They're not just tracking the thread energy, they're consuming it. The system is reclaiming the threads I added to the tapestry. Which clones? Ren One demanded. Did the bodies have any identifying features? Scars, clothing, equipment, anything that could distinguish one clone from another. The runner shook his head. They were naked, everything removed, but one of Kalen's people said one of the bodies had a broken left hand that had healed wrong, like it had been smashed and set without proper medical treatment. Ren 1's mind raced through the clone registry, the mental catalog he had maintained during the cascade, tracking each clone by number and creation order. Broken left hand, that's Ren 38. He was created on day 2 of the cascade, the 38th jump. During the cascade, he had injured his hand testing a physical interaction with a frozen object, the rock he had placed to deflect the Tier 5's arm. The injury had been healed by the thread, but imperfectly, leaving a slight deformation in the 4th metacarpal. Ren 38 is dead. The number was abstract, the reality was not. Ren 38 had been him, had his memories up to the moment of creation, had his calculating mind, his survival instincts, his fear of heights and his fondness for the sound of rain, a sound he had only heard once, on Earth, in a memory he wasn't sure was real. Ren 38 had left the canyon on day 30 and headed north with the specific mission of dismantling Kalen's slave empire. Ren 38 had failed. Over the next 4 days, more reports arrived. Ren 12, dead, found in the eastern sector near the Black Forest border, body harvested. Ren 27, dead, found in the southern approach to the Sea of Ash, body harvested. Ren 44 and Ren 51, dead together, found in a collapsed building in the ruins of what might have been a pre-human structure near the twisting maze, both harvested. Ren 9, dead, found on the Gray Plain 200 meters from a survivor settlement. The settlement's defenders had tried to fight the translucent creature and had lost 11 people in the process. The creature had taken Ren 9 and left the rest. By day 37, 9 clones were confirmed dead. By day 40, the number was 14. And the translucent stalkers were multiplying. What had started as a single specimen had become 7, each one slightly different, each one adapted to a specific type of terrain or hunting condition, but all of them sharing the same core capability, the ability to trace thread energy and the instinct to harvest it from clones. The system is learning, Ren 1 thought, sitting in the cave with his head in his hands while the reports piled up. It sent one creature to test the concept. The creature succeeded, so it sent more. Each one is a refined version of the last, an iterative design process just like the one that created the original stalkers and renders. But this time, the target isn't random humans. The target is me, all of me. What do we do? Davin asked. He was sitting across the cave, his massive arms crossed, his kinetic absorption muscles twitching with the restless energy of a man who wanted to hit something and couldn't. We warned them, Ren 1 said. Them, the surviving clones. 40 of them are still alive if the reports are accurate. We need to contact them, tell them about the threat and coordinate a response. How? Lena asked. They're spread across hundreds of kilometers. The communication channels only work at short range. We can't reach them. Ren 1 looked at her, then at the thread. I can, he said. Chapter 4, The Thread Call. It was the most ambitious use of the thread since the cascade. Not combat, not observation, communication, reaching across hundreds of kilometers to touch the thread of another Ren, a thread that was connected to the same fabric, the same loom, the same underlying structure of reality, and sending a message through it. The theory was sound. During the cascade, the network had allowed instant communication between all clones regardless of distance, because the communication wasn't traveling through physical space. It was traveling through the thread, which existed beneath space, in the structural layer of reality that the gray was woven from. But the network was gone. The clones were disconnected. To send a message, Ren 1 would have to reach out through the thread, find the specific frequency of another Ren's thread, and transmit information across it, like trying to call a specific person on a telephone network where every phone had the same number. The thread is the same for all of us, Ren 1 thought. We're all made from the same fabric, but each clone has a unique temporal signature, a specific vibration pattern based on their creation time, their experiences, their exact relationship with the thread. If I can isolate that signature, I can use it as a channel. He sat in the practice cave, closed his eyes, extended the thread. The fabric of time opened around him, not the frozen time perception of combat use, but something deeper, the structural layer, the weave. It was like looking at the gray from the outside. He could see the threads of the tapestry, not individual moments but the connections between moments, the causal chains that linked cause to effect, action to consequence. The threads were everywhere, a vast, shimmering web that extended in every direction. And each thread had a color, a texture, a vibration that distinguished it from its neighbors. Most of the threads were gray, dim, muted, the color of the gray itself. These were the threads of the world, the creatures, the terrain, the rules. They pulsed with a slow, rhythmic frequency that Ren 1 had come to recognize as the heartbeat of the loom. But among the gray threads there were others, brighter, sharper, threads that vibrated with a frequency that resonated with the thread in Ren 1's own chest. There, he found the first one, a bright silver-gold thread extending northward, roughly 300 kilometers away. He reached for it, touched it gently, and felt the signature, Ren 7, the first clone, the one who had talked to Myra during the battle planning, the one who had felt the specific weight of her trust. Ren 7, can you hear me? Silence. Then, a vibration. Not words, not thoughts, but a response. A change in the thread's frequency that carried meaning the way a change in pitch carries musical information. Ren 1. Yes, listen carefully. You're in danger. All of us are in danger. The system has created creatures that can trace thread energy. They're hunting clones. 14 are already dead. You need to move. Change your location. Stop using the thread for anything except emergency defense. The more you use it, the stronger the trail becomes. The response came slowly, each vibration carrying the weight of a mind that was processing information it didn't want to accept. How many? 14 confirmed, likely more by now. The creatures are called translucent stalkers, their variants designed specifically to counter temporal abilities. They can sense the thread, trace it across terrain, and harvest it from clones. If one finds you, don't fight it alone. Run. Find other survivors. Go to ground. Where are you? Base camp. Gray Plain, Eastern Transitional Zone. If you can reach us, do it. But don't come directly. Vary your path. Use cover. Don't use the thread to travel. Walk. And the others? I'm contacting them now, one at a time. It's going to take a while. This is my fault. I chose to go north. I chose to. Stop. It's not your fault. It's my fault, all of ours. We didn't calculate for residual thread energy. That's on the original, not on you. You made the best decision you could with the information you had. That's all anyone can do. Silence. Then a vibration that carried the emotional equivalent of a nod. Be careful, Ren 1. You too. Ren 1 released the thread and felt the connection snap back to its default state. His nose was bleeding, not heavily, but enough to indicate significant energy expenditure. Reaching 300 kilometers through the thread had cost roughly the same as a 1-minute time freeze. 40 clones to contact. If each one costs the same, that's 40 minutes worth of energy. I can do that in about 6 hours with breaks. He reached for the next thread. It took 11 hours. By the end, Ren 1 had contacted 36 of the 40 surviving clones. 4 were unreachable. Their threads were present but muted, flickering, as if they were being suppressed or jammed. Ren 1 cataloged them as lost signal and added them to the list of potential casualties. The responses varied. Some clones were calm, analytical, already aware of the threat. 3 of them had encountered translucent stalkers and escaped. Others were panicked, angry, or in denial. A few were resigned. They had accepted that they were copies, that their lives were borrowed, and that dying was simply the repayment of a debt. Ren 2, who had gone west toward the twisting maze, responded with a cold practicality that was almost unsettling. Understood. Adjusting trajectory. Will attempt to determine the creature's tracking range through controlled exposure experiments. Data will be transmitted if I survive. Ren 15, who had gone south toward the Sea of Ash, responded with something that might have been humor. So the system built bounty hunters. I'm flattered. I didn't think I was important enough to warrant a custom monster. Ren 33, who had gone to the Black Forest, responded with a single, heavy vibration that carried the emotional weight of exhaustion, fear, and a stubborn determination that needed no words. But it was the response from Ren 19, the clone who had gone to the Shattered Range, that stopped Ren 1's breath. Ren 1, don't come to the range, don't send anyone. I've found something here, something that changes everything. The system isn't what we think it is. The loom isn't. The thread went dead. Not muted, not jammed. Dead, severed, cut, gone, as if the thread itself had been physically destroyed. Ren 1 stared at the empty space where the thread had been. His hands were shaking again. No, his entire body was shaking. A fine, pervasive tremor that had nothing to do with energy expenditure and everything to do with the implications of what he had just witnessed. A thread couldn't be destroyed by physical means. It was a temporal structure, a causal chain, a connection between moments. Destroying it meant destroying the moments themselves, erasing a person's past, present, and future from the tapestry. Not death, oblivion. Something in the Shattered Range had the power to erase a person from time itself. And Ren 19 had found it. Chapter 5, Graves. Ren 1 found Graves sitting on the canyon rim, his massive body silhouetted against the gray sky. He was 4.5 meters tall now, an increase of 0.5 meter since the Tier 5 kill, with no sign of stopping. His silver skin glowed faintly in the diffuse light, and the air around him shimmered with heat distortion, as if his mere presence was warping reality. He was holding something in his hand. As Ren 1 approached, he saw that it was a rock, a piece of gray stone, roughly the size of a fist. Graves was turning it over and over in his fingers, and each time his fingers tightened, the rock changed, compressed, densified, reshaped. When he opened his hand, the rock was a perfect sphere of something that was no longer stone, a material so dense that it weighed perhaps 50 kilograms despite its small size. I can feel the atoms, Graves said without looking up. Not metaphorically, I can feel the spaces between them. When I squeeze, I push the spaces out. It's like the world is made of loose sand and I'm the thing that presses it into glass. That's a poetic way to describe density manipulation. I'm a poetic guy. You killed 3 men with a rock on Earth. Poetic and violent, they're not mutually exclusive. Ren 1 sat down beside him, not close, because Graves' passive density field could crush a normal person at close range, but close enough to talk. How are you? Ren 1 asked. Terrified. That was not the answer Ren 1 had expected. Graves had never admitted fear, not during stalker hunts, not during the Tier 5 battle, not when he had been a gang enforcer on a dying planet. Fear was a luxury he had never been able to afford. Explain. Graves set the sphere down. It hit the canyon rim with a thud that cracked the stone beneath it. I'm changing, Ren, not just physically, though that's bad enough. I can feel my mind shifting. My thoughts are getting slower but also denser, like the rock. I'm thinking fewer thoughts, but each one is heavier, more fundamental. I don't see the world the way I used to. I see it as structures, pressures, forces. The people around me are becoming abstractions, patterns of force rather than individuals. He paused. The shimmer around his body intensified. Saya says my cellular structure is no longer entirely biological. Something else is replacing my cells, not machinery, not energy, but structure itself. Pure, concentrated structural integrity, given form and function by the essence. I'm not turning into a monster. I'm turning into a principle. Can it be reversed? I don't know. Saya doesn't know. No one knows because no one has ever absorbed this much essence before. I'm off the map. Ren 1 processed this. The implications were severe. Graves was the team's primary physical force, the hammer that delivered the killing blow in every major engagement. If he lost his humanity, he might become as much of a threat as the creatures they were fighting. "Do you still trust me?" Ren 1 asked. Graves looked at him. Those steel-gray eyes, once full of pragmatic loyalty, now held something deeper and stranger, a vast, slow awareness that was evaluating Ren 1 not as a person, but as a structural element. "Yes," Graves said, "but I trust you the way I trust gravity. Not because I want to, but because you're fundamental. You're the reason this group exists. Without you, the structure collapses." That's the least emotional expression of trust I've ever heard. "I know, I'm sorry, I'm trying." "Try harder." Graves was quiet for a moment, then, with visible effort, like a man lifting a weight that was almost too heavy, he said, "You saved my life, more than once. Not because the math said to, because you chose to. That means something to me. Even if I can't feel it the way I used to, it means something." Ren 1 nodded. It was enough. It had to be enough. "I need to go to the shattered range," he said. "I know." Ren 19 found something. His thread was destroyed. "I need to know what did it." "I'll come with you." "No, I need you here. The translucent stalkers are getting bolder. One was spotted within 5 kilometers of the base yesterday. If they attack while I'm gone, you're the only one who can stop them. Then take someone else." "I need to go alone." Graves' eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because whatever destroyed Ren 19's thread might be able to destroy mine. And if it can, I don't want anyone else near me when it happens." The logic was clean. The emotion beneath it was not. "You're going to get yourself killed," Graves said. "Possibly. And you've calculated that this is an acceptable risk." "Yes. And you've also calculated that the people who care about you will be upset by this." "Oh, yes." "And you're doing it anyway." "Yes." Graves picked up the sphere, squeezed it until it cracked under the pressure of his fingers, sending shards of ultra-dense material spraying across the canyon rim. "You're a bastard, Ren." "I know. Don't die." "I'll try." Chapter 6: The Shattered Range. The Shattered Range was a 2-day walk from the base, and Ren 1 used every hour of it to prepare. He did not use the thread, not for time manipulation, not for observation, not even for the faintest perception of the fabric beneath reality. Every use of the thread left a trace, a residue of temporal energy that the translucent stalkers could follow. Until he understood the full extent of the tracking ability, stealth was more important than power. He walked, he observed, he thought. The terrain changed as he moved west, gradually at first, then dramatically. The gray earth gave way to black gravel, then to jagged black stone, then to the crystal formations that gave the range its name. The crystals were not natural. Myra had analyzed samples months ago and determined that their molecular structure was too perfect, too uniform, too designed to be the product of geological processes. They were grown, not formed, engineered. And they hummed. The low-frequency vibration that had driven scouts insane was present but manageable at the edges of the range. It was a constant, subsonic pressure that Ren 1 felt in his back teeth and the base of his skull. Not painful, but insistent, like a word on the tip of his tongue that he couldn't quite articulate. As he moved deeper into the range, the crystals grew larger. At the perimeter, they were the size of fingers, Deeper in, they were the size of trees. In the central corridor, the path that Ren 19's thread had traced before going dead, they were the size of buildings, jutting from the ground at angles that defied gravity, their surfaces faceted with mathematical precision, each facet reflecting the gray light in a different direction, creating a kaleidoscopic maze of reflections that made it impossible to judge distance or direction. The vibration intensified. Ren 1's vision began to blur at the edges, not from fatigue but from the physical effect of the sound on his ocular fluid. He slowed his pace, placed each foot with deliberate care, and focused on his breathing. The crystals are resonating at a specific frequency, he thought. Not random, not noise, a signal. The range isn't a natural hazard, it's a transmission tower. He found Ren 19's trail at the base of the largest crystal formation, a colossal spire of black glass that rose over 100 meters into the gray sky. The trail was physical, footprints in the gravel, scuff marks on the crystal surfaces, a piece of gray jacket fabric caught on a jagged edge. Ren 1 followed the trail upward. The climb was treacherous. The crystal surfaces were smooth, offering almost no friction, and the facets created optical illusions that made it impossible to tell which way was up. Ren 1 used his hands, feeling for edges and crevices, and climbed by touch rather than sight. Halfway up, he found the body. It was not Ren 19. It was something else, a creature unlike any he had seen before. It was roughly human-sized but not human-shaped. Its body was a lattice of crystal fibers, interlocked and faceted with no visible organs, no mouth, no eyes. It was beautiful and terrifying in equal measure, like a sculpture that had decided to become alive. It was dead. The crystal lattice was shattered in dozens of places, the fragments scattered across the crystal surface around it. And among the fragments, Ren 1 saw something that made his breath catch. Thread. Not the thread, his thread, the temporal fabric, but a thread-like structure that was similar to the thread in its geometry, its vibration, its fundamental nature. It ran through the creature's body like a skeleton, and where the body was shattered, the threads were severed, their ends glowing faintly with residual energy. This creature has a thread, not my thread, something parallel, a different thread on a different loom, or the same loom, different fabric. Myra's words echoed in his memory. The thread isn't just temporal, it's structural. It connects to the framework of reality itself. There's more than one framework. He climbed higher. At the top of the spire, he found Ren 19. The clone was sitting on a flat crystal surface, his legs crossed, his eyes open and empty. Not dead, not physically. His body was intact, his heart was beating, his lungs were breathing. But his eyes were vacant, the way a monitor is vacant when it's lost its signal. The lights were on, but nobody was home. And his thread was gone. Not destroyed, removed, extracted. The space in his chest where the thread had pulsed was empty, a void that Ren 1 could feel as clearly as he could feel his own thread. It was like looking at a wound where an organ had been surgically excised. Ren 19, Ren 1 said, no response. Can you hear me? Nothing. The body breathed, the heart beat, but the mind was absent. Ren 1 placed his hand on Ren 19's chest, over the void where the thread had been, and reached into the fabric of time. What he found there was worse than oblivion. The thread hadn't been destroyed. It had been rewoven, extracted from Ren 19 and integrated into the crystal spire beneath him. Ren 1 could see it, a bright, silver-gold thread woven into the black crystal lattice, pulsing with a frequency that was almost identical to his own thread's vibration but slightly off, like an instrument that was tuned a quarter tone sharp. The spire was using Ren 19's thread, feeding on it, drawing temporal energy from the extracted thread and using it to power something, a process, a function. A purpose that Ren 1 could feel but not understand, like a machine running in the next room. You could hear it humming, but you couldn't see what it was doing. The range isn't a transmission tower. It's a harvesting machine. It draws in temporal energy, thread energy, and uses it for something. And the crystal creatures are its collectors. Ren 19 was found by a crystal creature. The creature didn't kill him. It brought him here and extracted his thread. He's not dead. He's a battery. A living power source, kept alive so that his thread can continue to feed the spire. How many others has it taken? Ren 1 reached into the fabric and searched. The spire was laced with threads, not just Ren 19's but others. Dozens of them. Faint, dim, nearly depleted but recognizable. Threads that didn't belong to clones. Threads that belonged to original humans, ability users who had wandered into the shattered range and been captured, their abilities extracted and woven into the crystal lattice. The range had been harvesting ability energy since the humans arrived. Ren 19 was just the latest in a long line of victims. And the spire was using the harvested energy to do something that Ren 1 was only beginning to understand. The threads were being woven together, not randomly according to a pattern, a design, a blueprint. And the blueprint was for something alive. Chapter 7, The Design. Ren 1 sat on the crystal spire for 6 hours, watching the blueprint unfold. He couldn't see it with his eyes. The pattern was in the fabric, below the level of physical reality. But he could feel it through the thread, the way a blind person feels a face. By touch, by inference, by the careful assembly of partial perceptions into a coherent whole. The design was a creature, not a stalker, not a render, not a Tier 5 warden, something entirely new. Something that incorporated elements of all of them but was fundamentally different from any of them. It was being built from harvested ability energy. Each thread woven into the crystal lattice contributed a fragment of its original owner's power. A thread from someone with a fire ability contributed thermal energy. A thread from someone with a density ability contributed structural integrity. A thread from someone with a healing ability contributed regenerative capacity. And Ren 19's thread, temporal energy, contributed something that the blueprint had been missing: time manipulation. The creature being built in the crystal spire would be able to interact with time. Not as powerfully as Ren 1. His thread was stronger and more developed than any single harvested thread could provide. But the creature would have a native temporal capability, built into its design from the ground up, integrated with every other ability it had absorbed. It would be fast, because it could slow time around its targets while moving normally. It would be durable, because it could freeze time around incoming attacks and redirect them. It would be intelligent, because temporal perception enhanced cognitive processing, just as it had enhanced Ren 1's during the cascade. And it would be loyal, because it was being built by the system, for the system, as the system's answer to the problem that Ren 1 had created. The Warden was a repair tool. This is a weapon, a countermeasure specifically designed to destroy me and every clone that carries the thread. And it's almost complete. Ren 1 estimated the blueprint was roughly 85% woven. The remaining 15% required threads that the spire didn't have yet, specific ability types that hadn't been harvested from any of the captured humans. The system was waiting for the right people to wander into the range. Or it was sending the crystal creatures out to find them. The translucent stalkers aren't just hunting clones. They're collecting specific ability types, the ones that the spire needs to finish the blueprint. Ren 1 stood up. His legs were stiff from 6 hours of sitting, and his head ached from the sustained use of his passive thread perception. He looked down at Ren 19's empty-eyed body, then at the crystal lattice that was weaving a monster from stolen souls. What do I do? The options were limited. He couldn't destroy the spire. He didn't have the firepower. He couldn't rescue Ren 19. Extracting a woven thread from the lattice without killing the host was beyond his current ability. He couldn't warn the other clones effectively. They already knew about the translucent stalkers, but they didn't know about the spire, and contacting them would require using the thread, which would leave a trace that the crystal creatures could follow. But I can observe. I can map the blueprint. I can understand what the creature will be capable of when it's complete, and I can prepare. He reached into the fabric one more time, not to touch the spire's threads, but to read them, to trace the blueprint's design parameters, its capabilities, its weaknesses. The creature would be approximately 6 meters tall, bipedal, with 4 arms and a tail. Armor composed of compressed crystal, harder than render chitin, with refractive properties that would bend light around it, making it partially invisible. It would have the stalker's speed, enhanced by temporal manipulation, the render's durability, enhanced by density manipulation, and a range of offensive capabilities drawn from a dozen different harvested abilities. And it would have one critical weakness, the same weakness that all system-designed creatures shared. A centralized core. The Warden had one. The Renders had their secondary brain. The system loves centralization. It's efficient, it's controllable, and it creates a single point of failure. Because the system assumes that single points of failure are acceptable, it assumes that no enemy will be smart enough or capable enough to reach the core. It assumed wrong once, it'll assume wrong again. Ren 1 memorized the blueprint, every thread, every connection, every design parameter. Then he climbed down from the spire, left Ren 19's empty body on the crystal peak, and began the 2-day walk back to the base. He did not use the thread. He did not hurry. He walked with the measured, deliberate pace of a man carrying information that was too dangerous to rush with. Behind him, the crystal spire hummed, and deep in its lattice, the blueprint grew. Chapter 8: The Convergence. Ren 1 returned to find the base in crisis. Not under attack, Graves would have handled that, but in the grip of a different kind of emergency. The messenger corps had been busy during his absence, and the news they carried had shifted the group's mood from cautious optimism to barely controlled terror. The translucent stalkers had changed their behavior. Instead of hunting clones individually, they had begun herding them, driving isolated clones toward specific locations using coordinated pack tactics. 3 clones had been pushed toward the Black Forest, 2 toward the Sea of Ash. 1, Ren 22, had been herded directly toward the Shattered Range. They're not just hunting, they're collecting. The system needs specific ability types to complete the blueprint, and the crystal creatures are rounding up the clones who have those types. Ren 22 had the ability of thermal vision, not his original ability, which was, of course, the thread, but a secondary ability that had emerged after the cascade. During the divergence, some clones had developed minor secondary abilities, vestigial powers that were nowhere near as strong as the thread but were useful in specific situations. Ren 22 could see heat signatures at range, a useful scouting tool. The spire needed thermal vision to complete the blueprint sensory suite. The system knows exactly what it needs, and it's sending the crystal creatures to get it. Ren 1 called an immediate council Graves, Myra, Saya, Davin, Lena, Atom, Thea, and the 5 most senior members of the expanded group. 30 people crammed into the main cave, their faces drawn and tense in the gray light. I found the source of the crystal creatures, Ren 1 began without preamble. The Shattered Range is a harvesting machine. It captures ability users, extracts their abilities, and weaves the energy into a blueprint. The blueprint is for a new creature, a Tier 6 or possibly higher. It's designed specifically to counter temporal manipulation. It's 85% complete, and the crystal creatures are collecting the remaining ability types it needs. Silence, then Davin, how do we destroy it? We don't, not yet. The spire is too well defended, and we don't have the firepower to crack crystal that dense. We need to wait until the creature is complete, and then kill it when it emerges. Wait, that doesn't make sense, Lena said. If we let it complete, we have to fight a fully powered Tier 6. If we destroy the spire now, we only have to fight the crystal creatures. The crystal creatures are extensions of the spire. Destroying the spire would destroy them, but the spire is protected by a field similar to the Tier 5's. Kinetic energy is distributed across its surface. We'd need a strike powerful enough to overwhelm the distribution, and we don't have that. Graves is the closest thing we have to a weapon of that magnitude, but even he can't crack a 100-meter crystal spire. Then what's the plan? Thea asked. Her voice was quiet, she rarely spoke above a whisper, but it cut through the noise. The plan, Ren 1 said, is to let the creature complete, let it emerge from the spire and kill it in the moment between completion and full integration. When a creature emerges from a system structure, like a stalker emerging from the deep or the Tier 5 emerging from the caverns, there's a brief window of vulnerability. The body is fully formed, but the essence hasn't fully bonded with the physical structure. It's like a newborn, powerful but uncoordinated. How long is the window? Graves asked. Unknown. For stalkers, it's about 30 seconds. For the Tier 5, it was closer to 5 minutes. For a Tier 6, I'd estimate 2 to 3 minutes. Enough time if we're in position and ready. And if we're not ready, then we fight a fully integrated Tier 6 with temporal manipulation capabilities. And we die. The cave was silent. What about the clones being herded? Saya asked. If the system is collecting specific ability types, the clones who have those types are in immediate danger. We can't just leave them to be harvested. We warn them. We tell them to go to ground to avoid the crystal creatures, to use whatever abilities they have to survive. But we don't divert resources from the main objective. The Tier 6 is the bigger threat. If it completes and integrates, it won't just hunt clones. It'll hunt everyone. Ren, Myra's voice was soft. You're talking about sacrificing clones, other versions of you. I'm talking about prioritizing the needs of the many. Don't. The word was sharp enough to cut crystal. Don't you dare give me that speech. You're not Spock. You're a boy who's making calculations about whether other versions of himself should live or die, and I need you to understand what that sounds like. Ren 1 looked at her. Her eyes were blazing, not with anger, he realized, but with something worse, disappointment. I understand what it sounds like, he said quietly. I also understand that if the Tier 6 completes and I haven't prepared a countermeasure, 400 million people die. Not 14 clones, 400 million. Then find a way to save both. There may not be a way. Then make one. That's what you do. That's what you've always done. You look at a problem that has no solution and you make a solution because that's who you are. Don't stop being that person just because the math got hard. The cave was very still. Ren 1 closed his eyes, thought, reached for the clean, cold comfort of calculation, and found for the first time in his life that calculation wasn't enough. Because the calculation said, sacrifice the clones, focus on the Tier 6, accept the losses. And the calculation was right. It was the optimal strategy, the highest probability path to survival for the maximum number of people. But the calculation didn't account for the weight of knowing that each clone was him, that each one had his memories, his fears, his small, secret hopes. That Ren 22, who was being herded toward the shattered range right now, had once sat in the practice cave and practiced the thread with the same stubborn determination that Ren 1 had and had once said during the cascade, I want to see the ocean. I've never seen an ocean. Do you think there's an ocean in the gray? There wasn't. There never would be. But Ren 22 had wanted to see one anyway, and that want was as real as any equation. Okay, Ren 1 said. We save the clones and we kill the Tier 6. How? Graves asked. Ren 1 opened his eyes. The thread pulsed in his chest, not with the discordant vibration of the translucent stalker's presence, but with something stronger, something that felt like resolve. The same way we killed the Tier 5, but bigger, smarter, more complex. He looked at the ceiling of the cave as if he could see through the stone to the sky beyond, to the crack that was forming there again, to the tapestry that was fraying at the edges. I'm going to rebuild the network. Chapter 9: The Reunion Call. Rebuilding the network was not the same as building it the first time. During the cascade, Ren 1, then the original Ren, had created clones by traveling to the past and creating new instances. The network had formed naturally. Each new clone was connected to the thread, and the thread connected all of them. Now the clones already existed. They were scattered across the gray, each one independent, each one with 30+ days of unique experiences that had differentiated them from their origin point. To rebuild the network, Ren 1 didn't need to create new clones. He needed to reconnect the existing ones. The mechanism was different, but the principle was the same. The thread was a structural feature of reality, and all clones were connected to it. The connection had been attenuated after the divergence. Each clone's thread had retreated to its individual frequency, like a radio tuning to a single station. To rebuild the network, Ren 1 needed to retune all of them to a shared frequency. He could do this. He had done it during the cascade when he had established the communication link to warn the clones about the translucent stalkers. But that had been one-to-one, contacting each clone individually, a separate thread touch for each one. To establish a network, a persistent, simultaneous connection between all surviving clones, he would need to touch all of them at once. The energy cost will be enormous, but if the logarithmic distribution still applies, if the thread shares the cost across all connected instances, then the per-instance cost should be manageable. The problem is initiation. I need to make the first connection, establish the shared frequency, and then let the thread propagate it to the others. Like lighting a fuse, the first spark is the hard part. He sat in the practice cave, closed his eyes, extended the thread, and reached for every clone simultaneously. The sensation was indescribable. 36 threads, each one a different frequency, each one a different version of himself. Ren 2 in the twisting maze, Ren 7 in the north, Ren 15 in the south, Ren 33 in the black forest, and 32 others scattered across the gray, each one living their own life, fighting their own battles, being their own person. He touched them all. For one infinite, terrible, glorious second, Ren 1 was 37 people at once. He was climbing the crystal spires of the shattered range and running from translucent stalkers in the black forest and building alliances with survivor settlements in the north and watching the sea of ash for signs of movement and sitting in a cave with a girl who had swallowed a capsule on a dying world. And then the frequencies aligned. It was like tuning an orchestra, each instrument adjusting its pitch until they all resonated at the same frequency, creating a chord that was greater than the sum of its parts. The thread hummed with a power that Ren 1 hadn't felt since the cascade, and the network, the shared awareness, the distributed intelligence, the collective consciousness, snapped back into existence like a rubber band released from tension. REN. The voice was not a voice. It was a consensus. 37 minds speaking in unison, each one contributing a slightly different inflection to the single word. We're back. Ren 1 felt tears on his cheeks. He hadn't cried since he was 4 years old, alone in the slums of old Shanghai, and he had sworn he would never cry again because crying was a waste of water and water was life. He cried anyway. We know about the spire, the network said. Ren 19's thread went dead, and we've been analyzing the implications. Some of us have encountered the crystal creatures. Ren 2 has been conducting experiments on their tracking capability. Later, Ren 1 sent. Right now, we need to coordinate. The system is herding clones toward the shattered range to complete the Tier 6 blueprint. Ren 22 is the current target. He has thermal vision, which is one of the missing ability types. We need to intercept the crystal creatures before they reach him. Where is Ren 22? 40 kilometers southeast of the range. Moving northeast, away from the crystals, but the herders are cutting off his escape routes. How many herders? 3 translucent stalkers, variant B, enhanced speed, crystalline armor plating. They're using a triangular pursuit pattern to funnel him toward the range. Can he fight them? No, he has the thread and thermal vision. The thread is too risky to use. It would leave a stronger trail. And thermal vision doesn't help against creatures that are translucent. Then we need to send help. Who's closest? Ren 33. He's in the Black Forest, roughly 60 kilometers southwest of Ren 22's position. He can reach him in 8 hours at full speed. Send him, and send Ren 7 as backup. He's in the north, but he can shadow step through the relay points Lena set up. The relay points are shadow-to-shadow jumps. Ren 7 doesn't have shadow step. He doesn't need it. He has the thread. 3-second freeze at each relay point gives him time to cross the gap on foot while the world is stopped. The energy cost. Shared across the network, it's manageable. The network processed. 37 minds calculating simultaneously, each one running a different aspect of the operation. Trajectory, timing, energy allocation, contingency protocols, abort conditions. In 4 seconds, they had a plan that would have taken a single mind 4 hours to develop. This is why we need the network. Ren 1 thought, and the thought was shared, and 36 other Rens agreed. Executing, the network said. And the operation began. Chapter 10, The Rescue of Ren 22. Ren 22 was running. He had been running for 11 hours, ever since the first translucent stalker had appeared on the ridge behind him, its crystalline body catching the gray light like a living prism. He had identified it immediately. Ren 1's warning had been specific enough to recognize the creature type, and he had started running in the opposite direction. That was when the second stalker had appeared on his left flank, and the third on his right. A triangle, a pursuit pattern, he was being herded. Don't use the thread, don't use the thread, don't use the thread. The mantra pounded in his skull with each footfall. Using the thread would save him. It would let him freeze time, reposition, escape. But it would also leave a trail bright enough to guide the creatures straight to him through any terrain. Any distance, any obstacle. The thread was a beacon and he was in the dark. So he ran, his lungs burned, his legs screamed. The gray earth blurred beneath his feet. The stalkers didn't sprint. They didn't need to. They maintained a steady, relentless pace, faster than his jogging speed but slower than their maximum, keeping the triangle intact, adjusting their positions as he changed direction, always funneling him northeast. Toward the range. Ren 22's thermal vision showed him the world in shades of heat. The cold blue-black of the crystal formations on the horizon, the warm orange glow of his own body, the faint yellow shimmer of the stalker's crystalline armor reflecting ambient thermal energy. They stood out clearly against the cold background, 3 moving heat signatures, maintaining perfect spacing, herding him with the precision of sheepdogs. I need to break the triangle. If I can get past one of them, the pattern collapses and I have room to maneuver. He feinted left, a sharp change of direction that sent a spike of adrenaline through his system. The right flank stalker adjusted, moving to close the gap. The left flank stalker held position. The rear stalker accelerated slightly to maintain distance. They're not reacting to my movement. They're reacting to the pattern of my movement. They're not hunting me, they're managing me. He feinted right. Same response mirrored the triangle held. They're communicating, not with sound, with the crystal lattice. Their armor is a communication network, sharing information about my position and velocity in real time. I can't outmaneuver a distributed intelligence. He was getting tired, not the tiredness of physical exertion. His body had been enhanced by the thread's residual energy, giving him stamina far beyond a normal human's, but the tiredness of fear. 11 hours of sustained, unrelenting fear, with no break, no rest, no hope of escape. That was when the network reconnected. It hit him like a wave of warm water, sudden, overwhelming, almost painful in its intensity. One moment he was alone in his head, running from monsters. The next, he was part of something vast and interconnected, 37 minds speaking in a single voice, and that voice was saying, "Ren 22, hold position, help is coming." He almost cried. Almost. Instead, he choked down the emotion and responded with the only words that mattered. "How long?" 4 hours. Ren 33 is approaching from the south. Ren 7 is shadow relaying from the north. They'll converge on your position and engage the herders. 4 hours. I can't run for 4 more hours. You don't need to run. You need to stop. Stop, they'll close the triangle and... They won't. The herders are programmed to maintain pursuit at a specific distance. If you stop moving, they'll stop too and try to stimulus response you into moving again. They'll make noise, create vibrations, simulate threats, but they won't close to melee range unless you move toward the range. How do you know that? Ren 2. He's been running experiments on captured herders in the twisting maze. They follow a strict behavioral script: pursue, funnel, harvest. They don't deviate from the script unless the target does something unexpected. Stopping is unexpected. It'll force them into a decision loop. What if they decide to attack anyway? Then you run, but give us 4 hours first. Ren 22 stopped running. The effect was immediate. The 3 stalkers, which had been maintaining their perfect triangular formation, abruptly decelerated. They stopped 50 meters from his position and stood still, their crystalline bodies gleaming in the gray light. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the left flank stalker opened its mouth, a vertical slit in its crystalline face, and produced a sound. Not a roar or a hiss, but a tone. A single, pure note that resonated at a frequency that Ren 22 felt in his bones. It was a stalker distress call, the sound of wounded prey designed to trigger pursuit instincts in whatever was listening. But there was no wounded prey. It was a fake, a lure, a psychological weapon. Ren 22 sat down on the gray earth and ignored it. The stalker tried other sounds: the crack of a branch, the sound of a large creature moving through brush, the hiss of a stalker's geometric teeth, a low, rumbling vibration that simulated the approach of something massive. Ren 22 ignored them all. Through the network, he could feel Ren 2's satisfaction. Textbook. They're stuck in the decision loop. They won't break protocol without authorization from the Spire, and the Spire won't authorize a melee attack unless the target is moving toward the harvest point. How long can they stay in the loop? Indefinitely. They're not biological, they don't get tired or bored. But the longer they stay in the loop, the more data the Spire collects on the anomaly, and the more likely it is to update the protocol. We've got maybe 6 hours before it adapts. 4 hours then. 4 hours. Ren 22 sat on the gray earth, surrounded by 3 crystalline nightmares that were trying to psychologically manipulate him into moving, and waited. Through the network, 37 Wrens counted down the seconds together. Chapter 11, The Second Weaver. The attack came at 3 hours and 47 minutes. Ren 33 arrived from the south, a lean, weathered version of Ren who had spent 30 days in the Black Forest and carried the marks of that experience in the form of minor scars, a barely perceptible limp, and an intensity of focus that was almost physical. He had used the thread during the approach, a 3-second freeze every 15 minutes to cover ground faster, but the energy cost had been distributed across the network, reducing the per instance cost to a negligible trickle. Ren 7 arrived from the north, using the shadow relay technique that Ren 1 had devised. At each relay point, a shadow cast by a rock formation, a tree, a piece of debris, he froze time for 3 seconds, walked to the next shadow, and released the freeze. It was exhausting in theory, dozens of microfreezes, each one costing energy, but distributed across 37 instances, the total cost was less than a single 1-minute freeze. They converged on Ren 22's position from opposite directions, synchronized through the network to within a fraction of a second. The stalkers detected them immediately. Their crystalline armor flared with reflected thermal energy as they shifted from herding mode to combat mode, the triangular formation collapsing into a defensive cluster, all three creatures turning to face the new threats. Now the network said. Ren 33 attacked the rear stalker. He didn't use the thread for combat, that would leave a trail. Instead, he used a weapon that Atom had designed, a staff of compressed render bone, 3 meters long, with a weighted tip that could shatter stalker chitin. He had practiced with it for 30 days in the Black Forest, and his technique was brutal and efficient. The staff struck the stalker's flank with a sound like a bell. The crystalline armor cracked, not broken, but damaged, a fissure running from the point of impact toward the creature's midsection. The stalker retaliated. Its forelimb, a razor-edged crystalline blade, swept toward Ren 33's head. He ducked, rolled, and came up inside the creature's guard, driving the staff's tip into the fissure. The armor broke, the staff penetrated, the stalker convulsed and collapsed. One down, the network reported. Ren 7 engaged the left flank stalker with a different strategy. He had no weapon. His 30 days in the north had been spent on diplomacy and alliance building, not combat. But he had the thread, and he had the network, and he had 36 other Wrens calculating his moves in real time. He froze time for 2 seconds, just enough to reposition from 5 meters away to point-blank range, his hands pressed against the stalker's crystalline chest. Then he released the freeze and pulled. Not on time, on the creature's internal structure. The thread connected to the crystalline lattice the same way it connected to the fabric of reality, because the lattice was part of the fabric, a woven element of the tapestry. And Ren 7, guided by the collective intelligence of the network, knew exactly which thread to pull. The stalker's armor didn't crack. It unraveled, the crystalline lattice losing coherence as the causal connections between its molecules were disrupted. The creature collapsed into a pile of glittering dust. 2 down. The third stalker, the right flank herder, did something that no one expected. It ran. Not toward the range, not toward the remaining Wrens. South. Away from all of them, moving at a speed that none of the stalkers had exhibited before, 20 meters per second, faster than any variant they had cataloged. It's retreating, the network observed. Not retreating, reporting. It's going back to the spire to deliver data on our tactics. Can we catch it? No, not at that speed. Not without using the thread, which would leave a trail. Let it go. But it'll tell the spire what we did. It'll update the protocols. It doesn't matter. The spire already knows we can fight. The question is whether it can adapt fast enough to stop us. The 3 Wrens, Ren 22, Ren 33, and Ren 7, stood in the gray wasteland, surrounded by the remains of 2 crystal creatures and breathed. Good work, Ren 1 sent through the network. Now we have a problem. The spire will know we're organized, Ren 33 responded. It'll accelerate the Tier 6's completion. The remaining ability types it needs might be collected by force rather than stealth. Yes, which means we're on a clock. How long? Based on the blueprint I observed at the spire, roughly 2 weeks. Maybe less if the system reallocates resources. 2 weeks to prepare a countermeasure for a Tier 6 with temporal manipulation. Yes, that's not enough time. It has to be. The network fell silent. 37 minds processing the same impossible problem, each one approaching it from a different angle, each one reaching the same conclusion. The cascade took 3 days and nearly killed the original Wren. A cascade large enough to challenge a Tier 6 would need hundreds of clones, possibly thousands. We don't have the time, the energy, or the bodies. We need a different approach. And then, from the edge of the network, from the faint, flickering presence of Ren 2, who was deep in the twisting maze conducting his experiments on captured crystal creatures, came a thought that changed everything. What if we don't need more clones? What if we need a different kind of thread? Explain, the network said. The crystal creatures are made of harvested ability energy woven into a lattice. They're not alive, they're constructs, tools, and tools can be repurposed. You want to reprogram a crystal creature. I want to weave one, the same way the Spire weaves the Tier 6 blueprint, by taking raw ability energy and shaping it into a designed form. But instead of following the Spire's design, we follow ours. We don't have the Spire's weaving capability. We have the thread, which is different, temporal rather than structural. Do we, or do we have both? Ren 2's thought was accompanied by a data burst, a stream of observations and calculations from his experiments in the maze. Over the past 30 days, he had captured a crystal creature, a variant that had been separated from the Spire's control network, and had been studying its lattice structure using the thread. His discovery, the crystal lattice and the thread were made of the same material. Not similar, not analogous, the same. The same structural substrate, the same fundamental building blocks, the same threads of reality woven into different patterns. The thread was a temporal weave. The crystal lattice was a structural weave, but the threads themselves were identical. Which means Ren 2 concluded that the thread can interact with the crystal lattice directly. Not just disrupt it like I did to that stalker, but shape it, weave it, build with it. You're saying we could build our own crystal creature, the network said. I'm saying we could build our own anything. The Spire uses harvested ability energy as raw material. We have 37 threads, each one connected to the fabric of reality. We don't need to harvest, we are the harvest. We can weave ourselves into a weapon. The implications cascaded through the network like a shockwave. That would kill us. Weaving a thread into a crystal lattice means extracting it from the host. Ren 19 is catatonic because his thread was extracted. We'd end up like him. Not if the weaving is voluntary. Not if the host maintains consciousness and control during the process. Ren 19 was extracted against his will. His thread was torn out. If we do it deliberately with full awareness and consent, the process might be fundamentally different. Might. Yes, might. The network debated. 37 minds weighing risk against necessity, probability against possibility, survival against sacrifice. And in the middle of the debate, a new voice spoke. It was not a clone's voice. It was not a member of the team. It was a presence that brushed against the edge of the network like a cold wind through an open window, foreign, unfamiliar, and unmistakably intelligent. You're wrong about the weaving, the voice said. It doesn't need to kill you, but it will change you permanently. The network froze. Who are you? Ren 1 asked. A weaver like you, but not like you. Show yourself. I'm already showing myself. I'm in the threads. I've been here since the cascade, since you first bent the fabric. You tore a hole when you made your first clone and I slipped through. The crack in the sky. Yes, your unraveling created a gap and I came through. I've been watching you ever since. Learning, waiting. For what? For you to be ready to hear this. The Spire is not your enemy. The Tier 6 is not your enemy. The system is not your enemy. Then what is? What's coming through the crack after me? The presence withdrew. The network shuddered with the absence, like a room that had been occupied by something vast and had suddenly been vacated, leaving an impression of size in the empty air. What the hell was that? Ren 33 asked. Something that shouldn't exist, Ren 1 said. Something that came through the crack I made. Another weaver. Yes, and it says something worse is coming. Can we trust it? Ren 1 thought about this. The presence had felt, not friendly, not hostile, curious, like a scientist observing an experiment. No, he said, but we can't afford to ignore it. We prepare for the Tier 6, and we prepare for whatever came through the crack. 2 threats, 2 weeks. 2 threats, 2 weeks, 37 of us. That's not enough. It has to be. The gray light dimmed outside the cave. Another cycle was ending. And in the shattered range, the crystal spire hummed louder and the blueprint grew, and the thing in the threads watched and waited. Part 5, The Second Weaver. Chapter 12, The Weaver's Name. Over the following 3 days, the presence in the threads made contact 4 more times. Each contact was brief, a brush of alien awareness against the network's edge, a few words of information, and then withdrawal. The presence was careful, measured, as if it was rationing its interactions to avoid triggering a defensive response from the network. On the first contact, it gave a name, Ilara. On the second, it gave an explanation. I'm from outside the tapestry, from a place where the threads aren't woven into a pattern but exist in chaos. I came through the crack because the crack was a door, and doors go both ways. On the third, it gave a warning. The thing that's following me is called a devourer. It's not a creature, it's a process. It unravels tapestries. It doesn't eat threads, it undoes them. Where it passes, causality breaks down. Effects precede causes. Time runs backward. Structure dissolves into noise. The gray is the most ordered reality it has ever encountered, and it's drawn to order the way fire is drawn to oxygen. On the fourth, it gave an offer. I can teach you to weave the crystal lattice. Not the way the spire does it, brute force, harvested energy, mechanical assembly. The way I do it, deliberate, intentional, with full consciousness maintained throughout the process. But I need something in return. What? The network asked. A body. I'm a consciousness without a substrate. In the space between tapestries, that's fine. Consciousness doesn't need a body there. But here, in the woven world, I need a physical form to interact with matter. I need someone willing to share their body with me, temporarily, just long enough to demonstrate the weaving technique. The network erupted. Absolutely not. It's a trap. She's been in our threads since the cascade. She could have manipulated us at any time. Why ask permission now? Because she needs consent. The weaving requires willingness. If the host resists, the process fails. How do you know that? I don't, she told me. And you believe her? I believe she's telling the truth as she understands it. Whether her understanding is accurate is a different question. The debate raged for hours. 37 minds, each one with a different assessment of the risk, a different calculation of the probability, a different tolerance for uncertainty. Ren 1 listened to all of them, weighed them, and then made a decision. I'll do it, he said. The network exploded with protest. You're the primary node. If you're compromised, the entire network is compromised. I'm the best candidate. My thread is the strongest. If something goes wrong, I have the best chance of recovering. And I'm the one who made the crack. This is my responsibility. Your responsibility is to keep us alive. This is how I keep us alive. We can't fight a Tier 6 and a devourer with what we have. We need the crystal weaving. Ilara can teach it to us. The cost is acceptable. You don't know that. No, but I'm choosing to act as if I do. That's what being in charge means. Silence. Then, one by one, the clones acquiesced. Not because they agreed, most didn't, but because they understood the logic and because they were Ren, and Ren respected a well-reasoned argument even when he disagreed with it. When Ren 33 asked, "Now," Ilara's consciousness entered Ren 1's body like a wave of cold water. It was not possession, not in the sense of being forced out or suppressed. It was cohabitation, two awarenesses occupying the same skull, sharing the same senses, processing the same input. It was intimate in a way that was deeply uncomfortable, like being naked in a crowded room. "Relax," Alara said. Her voice was not heard but felt, a vibration in the same frequency as the thread. "I'm not here to take over. I'm here to show you something." Renwan's body stood up from the chair in the practice cave where he had been sitting and walked to the center of the room. His hands moved, but not by his volition. Alara was guiding them, demonstrating a technique through direct physical experience. "The crystal lattice is made of the same threads as the thread," she said, "but it's woven differently. The thread is a temporal weave, threads of time, braided together, creating a structure that can be stretched and compressed. The crystal lattice is a spatial weave, threads of space, interlocked, creating a structure that has mass and form." "You can teach me to weave spatial threads." "I can teach you to see them. Once you see them, the weaving is intuitive. You're a weaver, Ren. It's what you are. The thread chose you because you have the mind for it. Spatial weaving is just a different pattern." Renwan's hands moved in a complex gesture, not a martial arts form, not a dance, but something in between. As they moved, he felt his perception shift. The thread's temporal sensitivity faded, replaced by a new sense, spatial awareness. He could feel the threads of space around him, not see them, not hear them, but feel them as pressures against his skin, tensions in the air, vibrations in the ground. The cave was woven from spatial threads. The stone walls, the floor, the ceiling, all of it was a lattice of interlocked spatial threads, held in formation by the same structural principles that govern the crystal creatures. "I can feel it," Renwan said. "Good, now reach for one of the threads. Not the thread, your thread, a spatial thread, the ones that make up the cave wall." Renwan reached. His fingers touched the stone wall, and beneath the stone, he felt the thread, a single, hair-thin filament of spatial energy, vibrating at a frequency that was entirely different from the thread's temporal vibration but identically structured. "Pull it." He pulled. The stone didn't crack. It unraveled, a small section of the cave wall losing coherence as the spatial thread was displaced, the stone turning to dust, and then to nothing as the thread was extracted from the lattice. "Now weave it back." Alara guided his hands through the reverse motion, taking the extracted thread and reinserting it into the lattice, following the original weave pattern, restoring the stone to its previous state. It was like threading a needle while blindfolded, except the needle was a fundamental unit of reality, and the thread was the fabric of existence. When it was done, the wall was intact, not repaired, recreated atom by atom, thread by thread, exactly as it had been before. "That's the basic technique," Alara said. "With practice, you can extract and reweave any spatial structure, not just stone, but crystal, metal, even organic matter. And you can do more than repair. You can create, build, design." "Build what?" "Anything you can imagine. A weapon, a shelter, a creature." "A crystal creature." "Yes, but not like the Spire's creatures. Not hollow constructs powered by harvested energy. A real creature with a consciousness, a will, a thread of its own. Because you'd be weaving consciousness into it, not just energy." "Is that what you are? A woven consciousness?" Alara was quiet for a moment. The silence had a weight to it, the weight of something old and complicated and slightly sad. "No," she said, "I'm a natural consciousness, born in the space between tapestries where consciousness doesn't need a substrate. But I've studied woven consciousness. I've seen how the loom creates minds, builds them from threads of experience and intention. The Spire's Tier 6 will be a woven consciousness, crude, mechanical, but functional. What I'm offering to teach you is how to weave a better one." "Why?" "Because the Devourer is coming and the Spire's weapon won't stop it. The Tier 6 is designed to fight you, to counter temporal manipulation. It's useless against something that doesn't manipulate time, something that unravels it. You need a different weapon, a woven creature designed specifically to fight a devourer. And you can teach us to build it. I can teach you to build it. The network helps, more minds, more weaving capacity, but the core technique requires a single weaver with both temporal and spatial awareness. You're the only one who has both. Because I made the crack. Because you made the crack. Alara withdrew from his body. The cold water receded, leaving Ren 1 alone in his own skull, gasping, shaking, his nose bleeding from the strain of hosting a foreign consciousness. But his perception had changed, permanently. He could still feel the spatial threads, fainter now, without Alara's amplification but present, like a new sense that had been switched on for the first time. He could see the world differently now, not just the threads of time but the threads of space, the full tapestry, not just one dimension of it but two. Ren 1, the network said, "Report." He wiped the blood from his lip, took a breath, and spoke. "I can weave crystal. Not yet, not well, but I can feel the spatial threads and I understand the technique." Alara was telling the truth about that. And about the devourer. "I don't know, but the crack is real and something came through it, and it's been living in our threads for a month. Whether it's a devourer or something else, we need to be prepared for the worst. So we build two weapons, one for the Tier 6, one for the devourer." "Yes." "With 2 weeks and 37 rens." "Yes." "That's still not enough." "No, but it's what we have." Chapter 13, The Weaving. The next 10 days were the most intense period of Ren 1's life, and he shared them with 36 other versions of himself, each one contributing a different skill, a different perspective, a different thread of expertise to the collective effort. The work divided into 2 parallel tracks. Track A, the Anti-Tier 6 weapon. This was Ren 2's domain. His experiments in the twisting maze had given him an intuitive understanding of crystal lattice structures that no other clone possessed. Under his direction, the network developed a design for a crystal weapon, not a creature, but an instrument. A spear made of woven spatial threads, compressed to a density that exceeded anything the spire could produce, with a tip that could sever the Tier 6's core connection the way Graves' spear had severed the Tier 5's. The spear's design incorporated elements from every ability type the network could access: kinetic absorption for impact amplification, density manipulation for mass adjustment, shadow step for dimensional phasing, thermal vision for targeting, echo for acoustic disruption, biological sense for vital point detection, structural intuition for weakness exploitation, and the thread for temporal coordination. When the spear was wielded by a thread user, it could freeze time around the point of impact, ensuring that the strike landed with absolute precision and maximum force. Ren 2 couldn't build the spear alone. He lacked the spatial weaving ability. But he could design it in exhaustive detail, creating a blueprint that was as precise as an engineering schematic and as beautiful as a work of art. Track B, the Anti-Devourer weapon. This was Ren 1's domain. Alara had provided the theoretical framework, how to weave a consciousness into a crystal body, how to create a creature that could interact with the causal structure of reality rather than just the physical structure. But the practical implementation was entirely on Ren 1. It was the hardest thing he had ever done, harder than the cascade, harder than killing the Tier 5, harder than anything because it required him to create something that had never existed before, a mind. Not a copy of his own mind, not a clone. A new consciousness woven from threads of intention and experience designed with a single purpose: to fight a devourer. The design evolved over 10 days, shaped by the network's collective intelligence and Alara's intermittent guidance. The creature, Ren 1 called it the Loom Guard, would be roughly 10 meters tall. Its body would be woven from spatial threads compressed into a crystal lattice, similar to the Spire's creatures but with one critical difference. The lattice would be self-repairing. where the spire's creatures had a centralized core that, if destroyed, killed the creature. The Loom Guard would have a distributed consciousness, no single point of failure, no core to target. It would be, in effect, a network in physical form. Its primary weapon would not be physical but causal. It could interact with the threads of causality, the connections between cause and effect, severing them, redirecting them, creating local disruptions in the causal chain. Against a normal creature, this was overkill. Against a devourer, a being that unraveled causal chains, it was the only possible countermeasure. The consciousness that would inhabit the Loom Guard was the hardest part. Ren 1 couldn't weave a mind from nothing. He didn't have the skill or the raw material, but he could weave a mind from fragments, threads of experience drawn from the network, each one contributing a different aspect of consciousness. Memory from Ren 7, who had spent 30 days building relationships and understood the value of connection. Analysis from Ren 2, who had spent 30 days conducting experiments and understood the process of discovery. Survival instinct from Ren 33, who had spent 30 days in the Black Forest and understood the primal imperative of existence. Protective instinct from Ren 15, who had spent 30 days in the South and had, against all probability, adopted a group of orphaned children and was raising them. And from Ren 1 himself, the thread, the temporal awareness, the ability to see time as a structure and manipulate it. Each fragment was a thread, not a thread but a thread, a strand of experience and intention that could be woven into a larger pattern. Ren 1 spent days extracting these fragments from the network, each extraction causing a brief, sharp ache in the contributing clone, the sensation of losing a piece of yourself that you didn't know you could lose. "Are you sure about this?" Ren 15 asked after donating the thread of his protective instinct. "That piece of me, the part that cares about the kids, is the most important thing I have." "I know, that's why the Loom Guard needs it. A weapon without the capacity to protect is just destruction. We need it to care about what it's defending." "What if it doesn't work? What if I've given up that piece of me for nothing?" "Then the devourer kills us all, and the piece you gave up dies with us anyway." "That's bleak." "It's honest. I miss when you were just coldly logical. This emotional honesty thing is worse." "I'm working on it." On day 10, the spear was complete. Ren 2 had woven it in the twisting maze, using captured crystal creatures as raw material. The process was grueling, 8 hours of continuous spatial weaving, guided by the network's collective intelligence, with Ren 1 providing the initial spatial thread extractions that Ren 2 lacked the ability to perform. The result was beautiful, a 2-meter spear of compressed black crystal, veined with threads of gold temporal energy from the thread, silver kinetic energy from Davin's ability, and deep blue shadow energy from Lena's ability. The tip was a single molecule of hypercompressed spatial crystal, sharpened to a point that existed on the boundary between matter and energy. Graves could wield it. His enhanced body was the only one strong enough to handle the spear's density without being crushed by its weight, and his essence-enhanced senses could interface with the spear's integrated ability matrix, allowing him to activate its various functions through neural impulse alone. On day 11, the Loom Guard's body was complete. Ren 1 wove it in the practice cave, using raw spatial threads extracted from the Gray's bedrock. The process took 16 hours and left him unconscious for 6 afterward, his nose and ears bleeding, his body convulsing with the strain of manipulating spatial threads at a scale he had never attempted. The body was 10 meters tall. It was not humanoid. It was geometric, a polyhedral form with 6 limbs arranged radially around a central core, each limb capable of independent movement and fine manipulation. Its surface was black crystal, shot through with veins of gold, the temporal threads that would give it its causal interaction capability. It was empty. The consciousness had not yet been woven in. That was the final step, the most dangerous step, the step that Alara had warned them about. The consciousness weaving requires a bridge, she had explained, a living mind that temporarily merges with the woven body, providing a template for the consciousness to organize around. The bridge doesn't become part of the final consciousness. It's a scaffold, removed once the weaving is complete. But the process of being a scaffold is intense. The bridge experiences the birth of a new consciousness from the inside. It's like being present at the creation of a universe. Not everyone comes back from that. What happens to the ones who don't? They become part of the new consciousness. Not dead, subsumed. Their experiences, memories, and identity are absorbed into the new mind, adding depth and texture but losing individual existence. You're asking someone to risk becoming part of a weapon. I'm asking someone to choose whether the risk is worth the reward. That's what choice is, the weighing of risk against reward. Ren 1 volunteered immediately. The network objected. You're the primary node. You're the only one who can weave spatial threads. You're the only one who can coordinate the anti-tier 6 operation. If you're subsumed, then the network loses its leader and the operation fails. I know, but I'm also the only one with strong enough temporal awareness to serve as an effective bridge. The consciousness needs temporal structure to organize around. If the bridge doesn't have it, the woven mind will be born without a sense of time, and a creature without a sense of time can't interact with causality. I'll do it, said Ren 34. The network turned its collective attention to Ren 34, a clone who had spent the past 30 days in quiet, unremarkable survival, contributing little to the collective effort but also demanding nothing. He was, by the network's assessment, the most expendable clone, the one whose loss would be least impactful. I'm not expendable, Ren 34 said, reading the network's assessment, but I'm the most willing. I've spent 30 days being a minor node in a network of 37. I've contributed fragments and observations and calculations, but I haven't done anything. I haven't built anything, fought anything, or protected anyone. I've been existing, and I'm tired of existing. I want to matter. You matter, Ren 1 said. Would anyone notice if I disappeared? Would the network's calculations change? Would the plan be different? Yes, Ren 1 said. Every node changes the calculation. Every mind changes the plan. You've been contributing in ways you don't see because you're too close to see them. That's a nice thing to say. It's a true thing to say. Then let me prove it. Let me be the bridge. If I come back, I'll have done something that matters. If I don't, at least I'll have been something that matters. The network was silent for a long time. Okay, Ren 1 said, but I'm supervising the weaving. If anything goes wrong, I pull you out. You can't pull me out of a consciousness merge, Alara said. I don't care what Alara said. I'll find a way. Chapter 14, The Birth of the Loom Guard. The weaving took place on day 12. Ren 34 lay on the floor of the practice cave, his body still, his eyes closed. The loom guard's crystal body stood above him, a 10-meter polyhedron of black crystal and gold veins, its 6 limbs arranged in a radial pattern around the central core where the consciousness would reside. Ren 1 sat beside Ren 34, his hands pressed against both the clone's chest and the crystal body's core, connecting the two through the thread. The spatial threads that formed the loom guard's body were visible to his new spatial perception, dark, dense, interwoven filaments that hummed with potential energy. Ready? Ren 1 asked. No, Ren 34 said, do it anyway. Ren 1 pulled. The sensation was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Through the thread connection, he could feel Ren 34's consciousness, a mind that was identical to his own at the moment of creation, but had diverged over 30 days into something subtly different, quieter, more reflective, less certain. He could also feel the loom guard's empty body, a structure waiting for a mind, a pattern waiting for a signal, a loom waiting for a weaver. He pulled the two together. Ren 34's consciousness flowed into the crystal body like water into a vessel. It filled the core, spread through the limbs, touched every crystal facet and spatial thread. And then it began to organize, not randomly, but according to the blueprint that Ren 1 had designed. Memory here, analysis there, survival instinct in this limb, protective instinct in that one, temporal awareness woven through the entire structure like gold veins through black stone. And then the fragments that the network had donated, the threads of experience from 37 different Rens, began to integrate. Each one added a layer of complexity, a depth of character, a nuance of thought that no single fragment could provide. The consciousness was being born. Ren 1 could feel it happening, a rising tide of awareness, a mind coalescing from chaos, a someone emerging from nothing. It was the most extraordinary thing he had ever witnessed, and it was happening inside his own perception, through the thread, as if he was watching the universe create itself in miniature. The new consciousness opened its eyes. Not physical eyes. The loom guard didn't have eyes, but it perceived, using its spatial and temporal awareness to construct a model of the world around it that was more detailed and more comprehensive than any visual system could provide. It perceived Ren 34, the bridge, the scaffold. And it reached for him. No, Ren 1 said, and he pulled, hard, on the thread connection between Ren 34 and the loom guard. The new consciousness resisted, not out of malice but out of instinct, the way a newborn grips the hand that holds it. But Ren 1 was stronger. He had the full power of the thread behind him, and he pulled Ren 34's consciousness out of the crystal body with a force that left both of them gasping. Ren 34 opened his eyes. They were his eyes, dark, sharp, with a thin scar through the left eyebrow. But behind them was something that hadn't been there before, a depth, a vastness, as if he had seen something too large for a human mind to contain and had somehow contained it anyway. "I saw it," he whispered. "I saw it being born. It's beautiful. It thinks in 6 dimensions. It experiences time as a landscape, not a river. He stopped, his eyes focused on Ren 1's face. "It called me father," he said. Ren 1 said nothing. It didn't use words, it doesn't have words, but the meaning was there. It recognized me as the template, the scaffold, the origin point, and it was grateful, Ren. "Are you okay?" I don't know what I am anymore. I was a clone, a copy, a minor node. Now I'm the father of something that thinks in 6 dimensions. Welcome to parenthood." Ren 34 laughed. It was a strange laugh, half amusement, half wonder, half something that might have been grief. "Is it ready?" he asked. Ren 1 turned to the loom guard. The crystal polyhedron stood motionless, its gold veins pulsing with a slow, rhythmic light. It was waiting, patient, aware. "It's ready," Ren 1 said. The loom guard moved. Not clumsily, not experimentally. With the fluid precision of a creature that had been born fully formed, its 6 limbs coordinating with a grace that was almost musical. It turned its core toward Ren 1 and radiated a pulse of temporal energy that carried meaning. "I am here. What do you need me to do?" Ren 1 looked at the crystal creature that he had designed, that Ren 34 had birthed, that 37 Rens had contributed to. It was not a weapon. It was not a tool. It was a mind, a new, unique, unprecedented mind, born from fragments of human experience and woven into a body of crystal and time. 2 things Ren 1 said through the thread. First, there's a creature being built in the Shattered Range, a Tier 6 designed to destroy me and every clone. It's almost complete. We need to kill it when it emerges. Understood. What is the second thing? Something is coming through a crack in the sky. Something that unravels reality. We don't know when it'll arrive, but when it does, you're the only thing standing between it and 400 million people. The loom guard was silent for 3 seconds, an eternity for a mind that experienced time as a landscape. "I understand," it said. I was made for this." "No," Ren once said, "you were made for more than this. But this is what we need you to do first." The gold veins pulsed. "Then I will do it first." Part 6, The Loom Unbound. Chapter 15, Emergence. Day 14. The spire began to shake at dawn. Ren 1 felt it through the spatial threads, a deep, rhythmic vibration in the bedrock of the shattered range, like a heartbeat accelerating toward a climax. The blueprint was complete. The Tier 6 was being born. The network mobilized. 36 clones converged on the shattered range from every direction, some traveling on foot, some using shadow relays, some using timed freezes to cover ground in bursts of frozen time. They moved in small groups, spread out to avoid presenting a concentrated target for the crystal creatures that still patrolled the range's perimeter. Ren 1 traveled with the main strike team, Graves carrying the Black Spear, Myra, Saya, Davin, Lena, Atom, Thea, and the Loom Guard, which moved with a silence that was uncanny for a 10-meter crystal polyhedron, each footstep placed with spatial awareness that allowed it to redistribute its weight across the ground without compressing it, leaving no footprints, making no sound. They reached the spire's base as the sun, or what passed for a sun in the gray, reached its zenith. The crystal formation was alive with energy, its facets blazing with light, the hum of its vibration so loud that it was no longer subsonic but a deep, physical pressure that made the air feel thick and the ground feel soft. "It's beautiful," Thea whispered. She was right. The spire was beautiful in a terrible way. A tower of black crystal shot through with gold and silver light, poolsing with the energy of dozens of harvested abilities, giving birth to a monster. "Focus," Ren 1 said. "Myra status." Myra's eyes were unfocused, her ability trained on the spire. The blueprint is fully woven. The creature is integrating. The harvested abilities are bonding with the crystal body. It's almost done. Time window: 3 to 4 minutes from full emergence to complete integration. After that, it's fully operational. Graves hefted the spear. The black crystal hummed in his hands, resonating with the essence-enhanced cells of his body. "Ready." Loom Guard: "I am ready." Network: 36 voices spoke as one. "Ready." The spire cracked. A fissure ran from its peak to its base, a line of blazing white light that split the crystal formation in two, revealing the creature inside. It was worse than the blueprint had suggested. 6 meters tall, bipedal with 4 arms and a tail, just as Ren 1 had predicted. But the crystal armor was more refined than anything the blueprint had shown. Each plate was a single crystal, flawless and faceted, reflecting light in ways that made it difficult to focus on the creature's actual body. And the temporal energy woven into its structure was visible as a shimmering overlay, like heat haze, that distorted the air around it. It opened its eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern on its face, each one a lens of compressed temporal energy that could see time the way Ren 1 saw it. It saw the strike team. It saw the Loom Guard. And it smiled. The smile was not a human expression. The creature's face was not designed for smiling. It was designed for efficiency, for killing, for the precise application of force. But the smile was there, unmistakable, a deliberate manipulation of its crystal facial plates that conveyed an emotion that should not have been possible in a system-designed construct. Amusement. It knew they were coming. It had been waiting. Now, Ren 1 shouted. Chapter 16, The Battle of the Shattered Rain. The Tier 6 moved. Ren 1 froze time, 10 seconds of frozen reality, during which he could observe, plan, and coordinate. But the Tier 6 was already moving in frozen time. Its temporal overlay allowed it to perceive and act within frozen time, not as well as Ren 1, not with the same precision or duration, but enough. It could see him. It could see the strike team. It could see the loom guard, and it was adapting in real time. Ren 1 released the freeze. The world exploded into motion. The Tier 6's 4 arms moved in a pattern that was not random, but calculated, each arm targeting a different member of the strike team, each strike designed to eliminate the maximum number of threats in the minimum number of movements. Graves caught the first strike on the black spear. The impact was enormous. The Tier 6's arm was a crystalline blade, and it hit the spear with enough force to shatter a mountain. Graves' hyperdense body absorbed the shock, his feet digging trenches in the bedrock, but he held. The second strike went for the loom guard. The Tier 6's temporal overlay flickered. It was trying to freeze the loom guard in time, to negate its spatial awareness advantage. It failed. The loom guard didn't experience time as a linear progression. It experienced it as a landscape, and you can't freeze a landscape. The temporal attack washed over it like water over stone, and the loom guard responded by reaching into the causal structure and severing the connection between the Tier 6's arm and its body. The arm fell. Crystal shards scattered across the bedrock. The Tier 6 didn't flinch, didn't pause. The arm began to regenerate, crystal threads spinning out of the severed stump, weaving a new limb in seconds. It has self-repair, Myra called out. The same as the loom guard, no centralized core, distributed consciousness. The system copied the design. Of course it did, Ren 1 thought. The system can see the tapestry. It saw the loom guard's blueprint and adapted. Myra weak points. I can't. Its structure is too dynamic. The weak points keep shifting as it regenerates. It's like trying to hit a target that moves every millisecond. Davin, full kinetic discharge. Davin Un.